Hello, and welcome to Worried About Nothing. We're going to talk about the importance of having a teacher on the spiritual path. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Katya.
And I'm Kim.
Welcome to our show today. The importance of having a teacher on the spiritual journey. I think it's pretty important because I'm pretty sure I'd be lost otherwise. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, totally. I think I would be lost. I wouldn't know where to go. There's so much information on the internet, and it's easy to get lost because the information is confusing, even though what we're learning with our Ratty Mind is pretty straightforward. But there's just so much that it's easy to get lost.
And I think an important thing as well is how crucial it is to have a true teacher or a true guru, because there are so many people out there these days that are putting themselves forwards as gurus or enlightened people or teachers. And a lot of what they teach isn't necessarily enlightened or what a guru would teach. So I think with us, we're so fortunate that or whatever word you want to use, to have found a Ratty Mind Jason, because they are true teachers, true gurus. And the difference between that, having followed teachers in the past who had a lot of interesting things to say that had a resonance of truth, but now having found a Ratty Mind Jason's teachings, I can see that what the other people were teaching was very driven by ego or driven by wanting acclaim, or was along the lines of wanting to stroke people's minds and make them feel good about themselves, or try to make them in some ways feel superior or exclusive. Whereas in my view, a true guru or a true teacher strips all of that away. So you strip all of instead of adding more layers to the identity, it's stripping them all away. And I feel that's absolutely crucial. And some of the most, it's all valuable, the teachings and the guidance that we get from them, but some of the most powerful ones sometimes for me are when, like what happened to the last retreat and the Aratima did, and what Jason did on my birthday, where, as Jason describes it, they feel that they're not going to get anything back, so they can kind of knock some edges off or knock a layer off or shake you or whatever the terminology is, but really help you to drop something or see things more clearly. And, they can slam through the ego. And in both those cases, they were so valuable to me because, firstly, it was great to know that they felt they could do that, in that I wasn't going to, kick up a fuss and my ego go, no, but that's not true and whatever. But also because it was incredibly powerful, because I felt like, you can't quantify it, but so much got knocked out of place or out of where it had been, that opened up so much space and so much more, just more. And I'm not saying that's a measure of a true teacher or a guru, but when that can happen, it benefits you and everything in your life immeasurably. And I would much rather have those experiences, not saying that I'm always wanting those experiences, but I'd much rather have the possibility of those experiences than have somebody who just goes, yeah, you're doing great, you're wonderful, everything's precious, you're perfect as you are, all this sort of stuff that just doesn't really help on the journey of enlightenment, which is really what we're all on. It just makes you feel better about where you are right now. And I'm not here to feel better about where I am right now. I'm here to follow that journey. And anything that a true teacher or guru can do to help with that is fantastic. And being able to sometimes, like posting in the group, for example, being able to then see the response, Ratima's response, through those absolute clarity, the clear eyes that she has, and seeing yourself reflected in that clarity is so helpful as well. So it's lovely having the comments back where she confirms something, but it's equally lovely and equally valuable to have the comments back where she kind of redirects you or tells you you're wrong or points out to you that you're not on the right track. Because I don't want to mess around. I'm not here in this life to wander down the wrong track just to feel good about myself. I'd much rather be corrected. And that's the crucial thing. I think Jason spoke about it in one of his videos. I can't remember which one, but he said something like, a guru or teacher who loves you enough to, take a hammer to your fingers as you're holding onto the edge of the cliff and put up with the scratches all over that you might give them is the biggest example of love, or that's, you know, the biggest gift that you can get. And I would agree with that. I feel that that's the kind of teaching that I really value, is that stopping me from clinging on to this cliff that is not serving me at all. So to me, you know, that's a bit of a rambling reply, but, you know, those are some of the important things I feel about how a true teacher or true guru can really be so crucial, so important.
I can't compare. I didn't have any other teachers before her. I only met one guy who introduced me to the spiritual path and actually told me that there's such thing as spirituality. So I can't really compare. I know that whatever he did wasn't actually done properly, and there's definitely, everything was about himself, because he left his house and IT job and he decided to be homeless, and because he was following the spiritual path. But there was so much judgment into everything that he was doing, and everything was about him, so you can actually see how big his ego was. But that's the only experience I had. And talking, when you describe the idea of being scratched, I remember at some point, I think I wrote in the group that after one of the retreats, I really felt like I've been smashed and run over, and that's how I felt. And I remember writing back that I'll come back for more. And the response was, well, that's love.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So yeah, I definitely didn't know what to look for. I can see in other spiritual groups where a lot of people are just looking for comfort, and that's what people really want, without realizing that actually spiritual path is a lot of hard work, is a lot of experiencing it all instead of saying no to that experience. Yeah, so that's where I found a lot of confusion is among the people.
And people sometimes, from what I can see and from what I've experienced and seen with, you know, other teachers before Ratima, is people often are looking for validation and power, but power in the not pure sense, you know, power in the power over people sense, as opposed to self-power, power within oneself. So some of the courses I've done, for example, one of them was, it kind of taught psychic reading and energetic healing. But a lot of people come to these courses and approach the path with openness, wanting to find confirmation or reason for their existence. And that's why it's so important that the teacher be pure, because when you're in that open space and you go to a teacher, they can easily, if they're corrupt, they can easily manipulate you or teach you things that are not beneficial to you. So, for example, this teacher had close ties with John of God and used to talk about how Oprah was amazing and her power was so great and we should tune into her energy and all this kind of stuff. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. But now with hindsight, you know, knowing more what I know now and knowing in the news what's happened with John of God, you know, he was arrested for sexually abusing women and all this kind of stuff. It's made me, or helped me see it in a different light, because this teacher was basically encouraging us to go and see John of God if we could. You know, if we had the money, go and see him. He's a great healer. It's amazing, all of this stuff. And I don't know if this teacher was part of his cult or not. I haven't, you know, kept in touch. But if he was, then that's a road that a lot of people innocently would have been walking down, thinking, well, this teacher of mine whose opinion I really trust is telling me that this person is great, so yeah, I must go and see him. It can be a bit dangerous that way. And he also taught very much from the ego, so it was very much about his power.
I'd say that my experience is kind of similar to Katya's in that I haven't had a teacher before Ratima. So I don't have, I worked with other people, like we talked about buying packages off of telesummit. So I've had sessions with other people where I was doing a form of kind of like spiritual counseling with someone before, but never anything like the study that we're doing with the Ratima, like long-term kind of consistent feedback as long as you ask for it kind of thing. So I have nothing to compare it to. So, but at the same time, you know, there is something within me that always tells me like there's nowhere else for me to be. Like there's nothing else for me to do. Because at times when we're working on this path, like Ratty Mind even mentioned it, that the second year is the hardest, and a lot of times people want to quit. Or that's when you kind of like face that challenge. Are you gonna stay or go? It seems like. And every time that came up for me, it's like, well, where else would I go? Like, I can't imagine myself doing anything else. It's like if I dropped doing this type of work, I would probably always have it somewhere in my mind, like, where would I be if I didn't stop doing it? Or I wonder what the group's doing now, like what they're learning, what kind of insight they're getting. I just don't see a life doing anything other than this type of work. I feel like it's such a big part of my life now. I just can't imagine it without it.
Yeah, I've never done this kind of work before either, so consistently and so in-depthly, just made up a word. So the studying I did with other people was shorter courses, but because I assisted with spiritual events in the UK, I kind of repeated them because I was assisting. Yeah, I feel that when you find the right teacher, you find the right teacher. And I think that, as you say, Danielle, it's not something I can see myself ever leaving, but then I need to be open to the possibility that at one time or another, maybe I'll need to. Ratty Mind speaks, not that I want to, but Ratty Mind and Jason have both spoken about the fact that sometimes people study with her and then she pushes them out of the nest for a little while and they always come back at some later stage. But, sometimes she sees a need for it. So there's always that possibility, which I hope never happens for me. But, you don't know what the future holds. But yeah, it's definitely the most profound thing. And it's completely changed my life and just infused everything in my life. And I just feel that with every year that passes, it goes deeper and deeper or hits levels or layers that it just didn't touch before, or I thought touched, but it didn't. And that's the beauty of the work or the study. But it's interesting what leads people to the spiritual path or to the seeking. There's so many seekers, more and more these days, I'd say. And it's kind of interesting what draws you to a teacher, because I started the spiritual journey a few years ago. So I started it with learning Reiki, and then I went on this course with this guy, and then assisted at all of his workshops for the next few years, and did another, couple of short courses in between as well. And it's interesting, the motivation somehow, because at the beginning with the Reiki, it was this feeling that there's something more out there that I didn't know about or wasn't consciously aware of, but that I just wanted to touch, so I sensed what energy was. I sensed the spiritual world, as it were, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I wanted to kind of dive into that or explore that aspect of things. And every course I did kind of seemed to open that up a little bit more. But with hindsight, they were not really opening things up. They were kind of seeing things through a sort of distorted mirror in a way. Because with Aratima, when I first heard her speak, it was on one of those tele-summits. It was Katya, I think you gave me the gift of the course or the call or something, I remember.
I think it was 360 package.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. Thank you. Thank you again. But there was just an absolute knowing that this is what I've been looking for. Everything else didn't matter because this was the thing and this was it. There was that difference in feeling the truth of it. Even then, when truth to me was a little bit hazy.
Interesting when you said about motivations. I think I talked about it at another podcast. For me was curiosity, because I felt, okay, I have family, everything is working fine, but I feel something is missing. And this is, I think, I was like, okay, what's all this about? I was really curious. And then I remember reading Jason's books. I was like, oh, I think I was a little bit attracted to having some special powers too. There was a curiosity, and it's like, oh, maybe I can do this. Oh, maybe I can do that. So I was really curious to learn what it's all about. But I really wanted to have a formal course where I can have a full understanding what people are talking about. So that was amazing that Aratima decided to go ahead and do it again, because she did it at some other point in the past and then she stopped doing it. So it was beautiful that she offered that. In terms of leaving, I don't really I love her and there is no intention to leave, but at the same time as you, Kim, I'm open to whatever happens, because I'm realizing more and more that whatever we're learning is just called life and just embracing everything that comes your way, even if it's shitty sometimes.
Yeah.
So really, that's what it is. If it's meant to happen, well, I'll let it happen. Let it be, right?
Yeah. And leaving's never really leaving, you know, and that as we know her and work with her and are connected with her, I don't think we'd ever disconnect, because it's there.
No, I don't think so. I think I was mostly talking about just leaving the formal settings. But yes, of course, we're always connected.
Yeah.
I'll just share too that for me, in following this type of stuff, it was a constant fixing for myself. I was feeling like something was off, something was missing. It's like I had all these things that you were supposed to have, that was supposed to make you feel fulfilled, and then I didn't feel fulfilled. So I was like, okay, well, then there's something wrong with me if I have everything that I have X, Y, and Z. They said I'm supposed to be happy now, and I'm not happy now. So then I started doing all this inner searching, because I was like, oh, it must be something it must be me then. It's like I have all these things, so it's got to be me. And yeah, so that kind of propelled, I want to say, my search even deeper. But yeah, that was kind of my motivation. When you ask about motivations, it's like a fixing. I'm going to figure out what's wrong and I'm going to feel better about life.
I found that a lot of people start searching for spirituality, or I guess join the spiritual path, for the lack of the better words, because there's either a disease or there is a trauma. I found those are the two main reasons. And there is, of course, curiosity, which I believe is what it is for most of us, from what I hear. Just exploring what's out there, if there is something more to life than what we know. Yeah, it seems to be something big is happening, and that's when people realize, okay, life is not what it seems to be. There is something else to it. Let's explore that. I found those were the main reasons for many people and some of the spiritual groups that were talking about it. So, yeah.
And just to bring it back to like the teacher part of it, is having someone who's kind of already been down that road, who can help guide you and maybe steer you clear of like some of the mistakes that they made, just because they can kind of see the path a little clearer. To me, it's kind of like hiking with someone who already knows the trail. It's like they're okay, we're going to go up here this way now and we're going to do this, kind of, instead of just being out there for the first time and being like, trying to read the map. And it's like, is this, I don't know. There's no good markers here. I'm not sure what I'm doing.
But that's true. With the teacher, instead of having a lot of detours and may never arrive or climb that mountain, a teacher really tries to keep you on the straight path. That really helps, because you can spend years and years and be lost just going to another trail, right? And then coming back to the main route. So it's definitely helpful in a way that you don't waste time, really, well, unless you choose to. But teacher is there to guide you and to steer you clear from all the distractions that life is presenting you with.
Yeah. And I feel that when you find a true teacher, part of the learning is unlearning everything that you learned before, or everything you thought you knew before. And I think for me, because I had done quite a bit of studying with other teachers, a large proportion of the first year and probably second and probably third and fourth has been unlearning some of the things that I thought I learned then, or some of the things that I thought I knew from those courses. And as I'm unlearning it, it's interesting how with some of the teachings from other people, there can be a little grain of truth or something that mimics truth, but the true foundation, or the foundation of truth, is not there. So it's almost like it veers off. So it might be something like, or believing that everything is love, but it's not really, because it's conditional based on X, Y, Z, whereas when you learn with the Ratty Mind, Jason, what real love is, unconditional love is, it's very different. So sometimes terminology can be used, but it's not true. The energy of it is not true, or it's not pure. So I think there can be a lot of pitfalls for people. If people aren't guided to a true teacher, first of all, they can go down several dead-end streets and learn things that they may believe to be beneficial or true or of higher energy or whatever you want to call it. But they're actually just serving the ego or serving the small self, the self with a small s. But I think another thing that a true teacher or guru does is not only walk the path with you and show you the way, but they radiate and embody what it is to be enlightened. So not only is it an example to look at, but it's an energy that you can fall into or be with that helps you on a non-verbal level as well. They're so strongly embodying what it is to be enlightened in this world, in this body, the physical plane, as it were. That even when you're in their presence, whether it's physically or on calls or just energetically, it immediately shifts your vibration. Energy goes up and helps you have clarity of seeing and clarity of action, and helps scales fall from your eyes and all of the things that it does. And that's so important too, to have that example, that living example. That's not just words, because words are easy. A lot of people have all the right words, but people that have the right words that resonate in truth with their energy and their whole beingness, that's when it's true. Because it's not about the ego. They don't care what we think. They don't care what the impression they're making. They're just being. Whereas some other teachers are very concerned with people's opinions of them, and that they are respected and looked up to, and all of these things that can sometimes get in the way.
One thing I found, and this is something Ratty told to us, is that a lot of people are not qualified to teach. And there are a lot of teachers out there. They think, okay, I have an experience now, I can teach. But I remember what she told to us, that in order to speak truth, you also need to transmit it. So it's not just in the words, it's being able to transmit it. And I remember at some point she was talking about guru chakra that needs to be open before you can even teach. But it's amazing to see in the spiritual community how many teachers are out there. Pretty much everyone is a teacher. It's amazing to see. And I'm wondering, wow, are you really qualified? This was just the questions I'm asking myself. But yeah, that's the experience I had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because that's such a good point that, as we have experiences and we might have realizations here and there about things, or opening ups about things here and there, our minds can run with that and go, oh, I must be awake or enlightened or have discovered this and really know it, so I must share it with everybody. But it takes time not only for it to embody within you and become really grounded and rooted in you, but also, like you say, for the energy and the resonance to match the words. Because just having an experience is not enough, because you haven't had time and space to fully be it or become it. And I think a lot of people can sometimes have an experience that might be heightened or great or whatever, and feel that they are then qualified to go out and teach it, whereas everything about them, the subconscious and the unconscious and everything else might be shouting a very different message to what the words are saying. So it's a bit of a dangerous road to go down, because Ratty Mind said that even after awakening, it can take at least 5 years for it to really become embodied, and even then it can often take longer. So people just having an experience of something is not enough.
And there's also such a confusion in terminology, because in all the groups, everyone is awakened. Some people even call it being enlightened. And this is obviously not what we learn and what we understand as awakening and enlightenment. I think most of the people understand just coming to spirituality, of just joining that path, I guess, is already being awakened. And of course, this is not what we learned. So it's kind of interesting to see how those words are used and the meaning that people put on them. And sometimes I feel because people want to be there, then they change the meaning of the word in order to call themselves being enlightened or awakened. And of course, there's a different words as well, but I'm just using them interchangeably just to show an example.
Yeah, I think that can sometimes happen. People can be so keen to label themselves as such. Whereas I feel that it really takes your guru or your true teacher to tell you if you're awake or if you're enlightened, because how can you be sure for yourself? You know, if you're having experiences, and again, it depends on, you know, the terminology, like Ratty Mind speaks of, you know, awakening the mind and the heart and the body is 3 stages on the road to becoming fully awake, and then enlightenment is down the path. But I feel that if you call yourself awake, or if you label yourself as having achieved some milestone that you've set up in your mind, that can only be ego. Because how do you know if it's true? It takes somebody with clearer seeing and clearer vision and clearer knowing than you to tell you, to be able to see it and tell you, I feel. I didn't used to feel that, but as time has gone on, I believe that's true. And I don't know if it is true or not, but it feels more true to me. And I think with the awakening thing, I mean, it's even, the terminology has even been used now for people realizing that, you know, the government's corrupt and there's more going on under the surface, and, you know, awakening to what's happening in the world is now being touted as the awakened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, it's interesting though how being awake in that way kind of dovetails with the spiritual path sometimes. Because my dad, he knows a couple people and he's like, yeah, they seem to be kind of very in tune with what we are in terms of spirituality. My father and he's like, they all seem to kind of lean the same way on this stuff. And I was like, yeah, curious, isn't it? Because once you have a sense for truth, it's a sense for truth in every area, not just spiritual truths, but truths in whatever you look at, I suppose.
But I think going back to what Katya was saying, it's kind of like seeing that there's something else or something other than what you knew before. And that's not really the definition of awakened, you know, in that it's seeing that there's a doorway, but not going through and climbing the mountain. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, but I know what you're saying. It is seeing truth in different areas. And there is an aspect of that. If you are willing to see and learn or accept that there's something other than yourself, and open to seeing that what you've always been taught is not necessarily true, that can percolate through all aspects of your life. Yeah.
I find that with certain experiences, you can be quite clear what it is, but it is always important to have a confirmation from the teacher. Something just so big, then you know, and you never had anything that big. Well, not big, I guess, big is the wrong word, but something so different, then you might be able to have an idea of what that could be. But yeah, without confirmation of the teacher, you can always hijack it, or you can hijack it really and make something that it's not.
I think that's the danger of the ego hijacking it, you know, and I'm talking from personal experience of, you know, what Ratty Mind told me in the first year and how my ego ran with that. So I think it's very important to not allow the mind to have any input in anything that's happening to you experience-wise or realization-wise or opening up-wise, and just to accept it and experience it for what it is. And if the teacher tells you it's this, then it's that, but then don't let the mind run with it, because it can really corrupt things and cause all sorts of problems. But I think that's one of the keys, is that if you're allowing for the teacher to tell you where you're at, that's much freer and more open than you doing the opposite, which is climbing some imaginary ladder and achieving certain things and labeling yourself at every rung, because that's just mind driven. So that's, I awoke to that, therefore I must be awake, and I'm enlightened now because I've deemed myself enlightened. And because I'm enlightened, I can now call myself a guru. You know, there's teachers out there that call themselves gurus, and they may or may not be, but some of them, you look at the energy and you're like, really? Not sure. But that just sort of tightens everything up and compresses things even more. So in that situation, it's almost like you're using spiritual terminology and spiritual energy to tie yourself even more tightly up in your ego and your mind. You're doing the opposite of freeing yourself. You're imprisoning yourself even more because you're creating new straitjackets, with every stage that you're wanting to call yourself something or pass yourself off as something or present yourself as something. Whereas a true teacher, I feel that as a Ratty Mind Jason do, is they liberate you from all of those labels. So to some extent, it's not even about achieving, in inverted commas, enlightenment. It's freeing yourself of all the crap that lies between you and knowing who you really are. So it's kind of like a stripping away as opposed to a piling on. So it's almost the opposite energy of some of the teachers that are out there. And I feel that with more and more stripping away that happens, the more freedom there is, the more openness there is, the more light can come through, like really, as opposed to not just mentally. Some teachers seem to talk about light a lot, but when you look at them, there isn't much there. Whereas when Jason and Ratima talk about light, it's blinding. It's fully embodying what they're speaking of. And that to me is important, that somebody embodies it. They walk their talk. They're not just talking it. And then if they have the grace to tell you when you're not walking your talk, then that's a huge gift.
Yeah, I found in the first couple of years for me was a lot of comparison. I was like, okay, this person is there, I must be there. This person is there, I must be there. It was my mind constantly trying to achieve something, because the idea was like, okay, I'm going to take this course and in 1 year I'm going to be awakened. This is my goal, this is where I'm going to be, and I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to be the best student ever. I'll do all of these exercises, everything that I need to do. And you can just see how mind was running the show. Instead of letting it all go, the mind was like, yeah, okay, this person is there. Oh, I must be behind. It's just so funny how the mind can make things up. That's when it can be really dangerous, that the ego can hijack things and just really say that you're there. Because truly, once you've stripped away of many of these conditions, then it doesn't really matter to you if you're there, if you're not. It's kind of, you get to the point where it's like, okay, well, I already feel different. Does it really matter if I had that experience or not? Oh yeah, it changes. That's why I think a lot of people who are true gurus, they don't brag so much about it. They don't go and tell everyone in the nose, look, I'm enlightened.
Taking up billboards and adverts for the TV. Look at me, I'm enlightened.
FYI. Wear a shirt or a t-shirt or something.
That'd be so funny. But yeah, I know what you mean about the comparison. I did some of that definitely in the first couple of years, if not longer. And it's just so dangerous, because with comparison as well, you don't give people the opportunity to be human, especially if you're looking up to them. If you're comparing yourself to somebody who you think is more advanced, in inverted commas, you take away permission from them to make mistakes or to do things wrong, or like I say, to be human. You take away their humanity and you hold them up as this fake idol in some ways. And you're not helping them by doing that. And you're not helping yourself because you're comparing yourself to something that's not real. So how can you measure up? It's not possible. No. So yeah, I'm glad that that's stopped.
I'd say you're right. Absolutely right with that. Because based off of the conversations, being on the calls and what some people would say to Ratima, it's like, wow, they really get it. They must be like so close to waking up or something, right? This is my mind. And then I'm like the next, I don't know, week or whatever, maybe some sort of karma moves through and they're like expressing something else. And I'm like, oh, maybe I was wrong, but it's all thoughts that my mind's having about other people. And it's funny because this came up for me recently and I'm like, wow, because it was kind of reflecting on one of the experiences I had because I did it to myself because I based it off a conversation, or an interaction I had with a Ratima. I'm like, oh, this had happened. And I was like, it was almost like a judging of myself, but also like what do the other students think of me at this point? Because I remember at one of the retreats, like I was getting way more attention than like I am ever prepared to handle in terms of people being like, yeah, we gotta watch you. I'm like, what is happening? I was like, they're probably so disappointed now, in my progress based off of that whole experience. And it just kind of showed me like, wow, it makes no sense to, think along those lines at all whatsoever, because you have no idea, what's in that person's path. That's just waiting to come up. You can't base it off of anything really.
And you can't judge them or yourself. I mean, I think, and again, talking from experience, it's like, the first year when Ratty Mind said to everyone, right, Kim's awake. My ego loved it. I hated it, but my ego loved it. And so at the first retreat, I remember everyone was crowding around me asking what being awake meant. And I felt, my true self felt very uncomfortable with it. My ego was on a roll. It's like, yeah, I'll tell you what it's like. And it's just, it took a good couple of years for that to be knocked out fully. And I think actually it took till the last retreat, really, when Ratty Mind just knocked me out. And the thing that I learned then, and I'd kind of known, but the thing I learned then that I fully experienced was it doesn't even matter what people think of you, because everyone's journey is their own. Everyone's journey is different. There is no comparison. So whether you're awake, you're not awake, wherever you are on the path, it doesn't matter. And if people are going to build up an image of you based on labels, so if they're going to look at you and say, well, you're awake, therefore that means you must be X, Y, Z, that's their issue. It's got nothing to do with you. And you can't care, and I found that I didn't care about people thinking about, whatever they thought about me, whether it might have been, oh my God, she's been fooling us all these years, or whatever it might be, I just didn't care. Because I was just so happy that a Ratty Mind had given me that gift, that nothing else mattered. So I think that can be a pitfall on the road as well, because I found myself doing that with some of the other students in the course. I'd kind of, there'd be measuring. So it'd be like, well, Ratty Mind said to them that they're this, therefore I must be that. Okay, well, I'm not. Let me find the fault in them so I feel better about myself. All this stuff, and that all fell away. And I'm so glad, because now I can just look at everyone as a student, a fellow student. We're all where we're at, and it doesn't matter. And there's no comparison or judgment anymore. And I hadn't realized how much of that there was until it fell away. Sometimes you don't realize until you let go of something how heavy something is. But I'm just so glad that that's gone now, because that's a horrible burden to be carrying over years. You're never relaxed. You kind of always, just speaking again from experience, just always that tension, or that kind of, I must do better, or I must be this, or I must try harder, or whatever it might be. Whereas now it's kind of like, well, I'm where I'm at. And with every letting go or every release, there's more and more freedom, and more things are changing, because I've let go of control of wanting them to be a certain way. And that's just a joy in itself. So, lots of learnings. And I think that was a lesson that Ratty Mind, had been trying to teach me for 4 years, and it took me that long to learn. But it got to a point where she could finally kind of, get the hammer out and break that one, which I'm so glad about.
Thank you for listening to our conversation today about the importance of having a true teacher on your spiritual journey. If you have any questions for us, please leave them in the comments below. We have links to our teachers' websites down in the description if you want to learn more about Jason and Ratty Mind. And if you like this content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye.